Oladipo, thank you for joining us. What a long day it's been. You have covered President Buhari extensively, especially during this 8-year tenure. What do you consider the most revealing moments that showed us vulnerabilities or strength as president?
At the time he came into power, and even up till now, anybody sitting on that presidential seat is doing a tough job. You know, there is a common saying around this part of the country, and generally, it's easier to destroy than to build. We build something. We may not be too aware of what things look like, but we had stories. I knew that at some point in 1986, my dad told me when they brought him a brand new Peugeot that it cost him 6,000 naira. And then we have gotten to a stage in this country where even that Peugeot, we don't assemble it again. We bring it in. And at what cost? So when he got into power, and very much unlike when he was a military head of state, there was a difference. You needed the rule of law. It wasn't by fiat again. It wasn't the war against indiscipline era again, where you just give the order and everybody's queuing up at the bus stop. You have to go through lawmakers, the National Assembly, and all of those. So he had not just his task cut out for him, but others to also cross. The naira was weak. The economy was crumbling. Until now, not so much has changed in terms of our earning power. We're just trying to push in things. So when he came in, it wasn't rosy. And I've said it over and over again. Anybody who thinks that it is just going to get into the villa and say, Nigeria, be well again, that person is joking.
And I agree with you to that extent. But for former President Buhari, his case is peculiar.
Yes.
He was determined to be president. He won in his 4th attempt, right?
Yes, he won.
So opinions remain divided as to whether or not he was overwhelmed by the complexity of the Nigerian problem. Looking back now, history will now have to judge him relative to what he was able to do, compared to the campaign promises that he gave to Nigerians.
It's easier to make promises now. When you get in, the reality sets in. For anyone going into the villa to achieve anything substantial now, that person must have done a lot of work. Like I said, and some people share that opinion, I may completely be wrong. Buhari dying today would have been better off not coming into the presidency again. Because as a military head of state, he covered a lot of grounds, and we can give that to him. But being
he would have
civilian president,
he would have died an unfulfilled man.
Well, it all depends. It's not everything.
He left power up abruptly as a military head of state.
It's not everything that we aspire to. It's not everything we aspire to that we get. It's not. And at the 3rd attempt, you will recollect, after he failed, he said he wasn't going to do it again until Asiwaju Tinubu stepped in and said, no, you must do it again. So for me, I believe it would have been greater in debt having died as a military president or as a military head of state, not as a civilian, because the times were bad and the times are still bad.
But somehow you would agree that the honors are now somewhat double. You have military honors now, you have a civilian honor, and somehow...
Now, he has a state funeral. He probably wouldn't have that if he wasn't president.
He would have had that.
Yes, and...
because he was a former military head of state.
Absolutely.
He would have had that.
And during his time as president, democratically elected president, we also saw some things he brought to bear. I talk about transformation he brought to his hometown, for instance, the Federal University of Transportation, for instance. That probably wouldn't have happened. If it would have happened under a different administration, it would probably be in a different community.
Yeah, well, you really can't say, because all of these things that we do, they are political. You know, people who want to curry your favor. For instance, if you had a different order of state and he wants a Buhari to deliver some votes to him, he could do that. But I'm not saying we can't take that away that he did certain things for certain people, including his own community.
Because many of the political leaders we see at the burial today are those who have worked with him very closely in the past 10 years, maybe on his cabinet.
I completely agree with you on that. I completely agree with you on that. I'm not taking away from that. But I'm saying in terms of the comments that we are saying today about the fact that some are saying he didn't perform, he didn't do this, because they didn't actually follow what happened during his administration. They didn't. And whatever those who came after the PDP government did up until now is just laying the foundation for our recovery.
Who do you think will inherit these 12 million votes that Buhari has carried, or, you know, that they say he's carried for so long?
Well, don't forget he's from a political family. And that political family he inherited from some people. Because when you put it all together, you'll still be talking about the Yaraduas. It doesn't mean that the Yaraduas hold the 12 million votes. What it means is the fact that some people believe in him. Those people will now look for who else to believe in. And that's what is going to happen. So it's not as if somebody will just come and grab the complete 12 million votes.
How do you think that decision would be made or reached? I'm thinking, is it that there would be a meeting of core leaders, you know, who are loyal to him, and then they are, okay, we nominate you to serve in this capacity? Or because when you say it's the people who will decide, how would they decide? Because it means there would then have to be some form of poll, an election.
And now, that decision, this is the way it's going to play out. If you recollect some months back, there was a visit by the CPC bloc, that's Congress for Progressive Change, some top leaders who went to see him and said, it's like the present administration has sidelined us. We want to move. We are not happy again. These were people who also served in government before now.
I think they're divided, actually, between the current...
exactly. When you now look at that group,
yes,
you still have some people who are in government now within that group who are still saying we are going with APC. You have some of them who are already in the African Democratic Congress. That's the coalition. That's what I'm saying. It's going to all move around. Things will happen, and
there are quite a number of politicians who appear to have stayed close to him even after he left office. There is Ibikun Amosun of Ogun State, who was with him last year during his 81st birthday. Nasir El-Rufai also recently visited him, even while he was forming his ADC alliance. Would you say that Buhari left a political successor that his followers can identify with?
No, I won't say that. Because nobody can say this is the successor. Nobody. Unlike in those days when we had during the Second Republic, when we had National Party of Nigeria, Unity Party of Nigeria, you can say, okay, this is who is likely to succeed, say, a Chief Obafemi Awolowo or an Nnamdi Azikiwe. But now it's no longer that way. Everybody comes together with their own constituency, their votes, their power. Nobody has absolute power now. But in some instances, you have some leaders who are able to put people together. And that is the most important now. So everybody will now go to their communities, to their constituencies, to go and deliver those constituencies to whoever they want. It's split now. It's fluid. It's not compact. Anything can happen.
Let's take this on something very important, Mr. Oladipo. It's the silence of the man called Muhammadu Buhari. I think it was a spokesperson who mentioned that, no, it was Pastor Tunde Bakare on the show yesterday, who mentioned that he had called him when Sunday Igboho was arrested, and he was really livid and was saying, "I'm not going to talk to you again. How can this happen?" And then Buhari said, I didn't know about it. You know, the security operatives just sometimes throw my names around. How do you think that has impacted his leadership, really? A situation where he probably doesn't interfere. He allows you to think by yourself.
See him as somebody who is unwilling to commit himself at every point in time. And sometimes I think silence can be very golden. Because when you speak too much, people can easily know where you are going and use that to their own advantage, you know? And that's why Buhari will always remain a Buhari. You can't take that away from him. You are just looking at him, he's not saying anything to you. But he knows where he's going. And at the end of the day, he takes his decisions. You would not know whether he has consulted or not. The most important thing for him is that something must be done. And he has remained an enigma in a way. Because when sometimes you go back and you say, let's even look at some results of elections, you will see those who are claiming that they are closer to him than even his wife. They will win in their polling station, and for subsequent elections, they lose. Because people have come out to vote for Buhari and not the other candidates. So it's a man you can't, nobody can say, I really know everything about him. And some of us who have, had stories about the villa, we've even had situations where he had spurned his wife on some issues. You know, a lot of times we assume erroneously that once the first lady enters the room, which some have fondly referred to him as having said the Oza room, they believe everything is settled. But we've had stories of him saying, no, you can't do this. We're in government, this can't happen. And that's the man. And that's why when people first think about him, no matter what happens around him, a lot of people believe his pattern, his claim. People, like he mentioned now, use his name to do a lot of things. And that's the way for every president. The president can be everywhere. So somebody can wake up and say, Oga said I should tell you this. How will you say the president did not say the person, knowing the closeness?
But sometimes that seems to have given room to a lot of insinuation.
Look at what happened just before the 2023 election.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where it looked as if he wasn't going to support his party's candidate.
Yes.
And then there was cash scarcity.
Yeah.
The whole country felt the brunt of that silence.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And it really impacted on that election because some people thought he wasn't backing Ashwaju for that election. But at the end of the day, we saw some sense in that. Number one, the level of bribery in that election went down drastically. Number two, it has helped us till now to know that cash is not king. And that you can do your transactions without even having
I'd like us
any
to
cash
even
with you.
stay away from that as we begin to wrap up this conversation. Precisely, how do you think that Muhammadu Buhari will be remembered across board? Because there's a sharp difference between what the political class is saying and what the young people are talking about. In years to come, it's going to be talked about in history. It's going to be taught in classes. How do you think it's going to be remembered?
The truth is this, and it happens almost everywhere. You value a man when he's gone because you have a benchmark. You have somebody to compare him to. And that's what we are seeing now. And that's what we're going to see in the future. I was saying it not long ago. A lot of people are critics. They don't know that government and governance, they are two difficult things to handle. You only need to be there. That's why at some point, some people are saying maybe Aso Rock is changed. It's not jinxed. It's just the reality of the fact that the enormity of the problems to be confronted is not something that you would have fathomed before you come in. Even at the level of the states, you see some state governors, they get in and they are panicking that they didn't know the problem was this much. Because they always think, and wrongly too, that till now, the problem of Nigeria is money. But it has gone beyond that. We have seen people who don't even want the system to work because it's to their advantage. People who want to gather all the money and enslave people. When you go through some of the things that happened in the past, for instance, look at the revelations coming out on the former CBN governor. Who would have believed that happened under Buhari? But how would he have seen through that? Sitting where he's sitting, unless there are revelations like this. We saw it under President Obasanjo too. When people were saying some projects had been executed, whereas they only collected the money, and he made some discoveries. If you recollect, he made some discoveries, even in some states. I remember a governor in this southwest who took Obasanjo on a particular road and told him this was the road for which you released money last year. The road was not done. So until when you get there, and if it's a local government, you can say, okay, the man can even walk the whole local government in one day.
Maybe it's not as simple as some people think it is.
Yes, and that's because they are not there.
So when you get in, you discover the enormity
of the challenges and the size of the country you are governing. You know, some will always argue that after all, United States of America is bigger. It has 50 states and so on. But the structure they are running is different from us.
Mr. Dr. Oladipo, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Abosede, what a day it's been.
A very long day. We've been on this all day, monitoring the state funeral for the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, whose body left the Heathrow Airport at about 7:48 a.m. today, accompanied by Vice President Kashim Shettima, who was dispatched by President Bola Tinubu to both commiserate with the family and bring the body back home. So we saw the body move alongside...
By 2 p.m., I believe the military aircraft had touched down at the Umaru Musa Yar'Adua International Airport in Katsina, where a brief but very dignified military ceremony was held in his honor. From there, we saw what seemed a solemn convoy, and I saw you guys, really comment on that. Made its way to Daura at about 4:16 p.m. His body arrived to a waiting crowd, dignitaries, top military brass, former governors, hundreds, if not thousands of mourners, both in and outside Nigeria. Daura and indeed Nigeria stood still today for former President Muhammadu Buhari. It is indeed the end of an era from being a military head of state to that historic electoral victory that made him the first Nigerian opposition leader to win an incumbent. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation with us. But we've shown you all the way from Abuja and from Heathrow, and you saw the finer coming out to earth in Daura. The conversation doesn't